Hello there, everybody. My name is Mr. Moonshine, aka Alex, and I'm here to read you a bedtime story. Before we start, I would like to share a very interesting fact I learned today. Our emotions are comprised of hormones that flood the brain. When the brain feels too flooded, it tries to flush them out using tears. This means that whenever you cry from an emotion, you're basically feeling the emotion as strongly as you physically can, so much so that your body is too overwhelmed by it and needs to let it go. This is why crying is very, very healthy, and also why tears produced by different emotions have a different structure when viewed under a microscope. Today's scent of incense is Satya's Christmas tree incense, purchased from the shop of my friend's parents, I believe. It's one of my favorite scents, and it reminds me of a shop I like to visit after I go to the dentist with my dad. Today's bedtime story is The Warlock's Hairy Heart from Tales of Beedle the Bard by J.K. Rowling. Before we start, I would like to say I do not support J.K. Rowling or her opinions. I think she is an awful person, and I refuse to give her a single penny into her wallet of what I have. This book is borrowed from my local library, which I encourage you also, if you have libraries around you, I encourage you very much to support, donate, or go read in them, because they are very good for the community and they're very, very important for everyone around. So without further ado, never mind, there is further ado. This story contains gore, so if you are squeamish and would like to skip the story and possibly go right to the Albus Dumbledore notes on the story, you can skip ahead about 10.5 minutes, which is how long it took me to record a reading of the story to my friend. So if you are squeamish and would like to not listen to the story and only listen to the notes, skip ahead 10.5 minutes. You'll probably be at the end of the story. I don't know how to edit, so I can't really give you an accurate timestamp, and I apologize for that. Without further ado, let's go to The Warlock's Hairy Heart on page 45. There was once a handsome, rich, and talented young warlock who observed that his friends grew foolish when they fell in love, gambling and preening, losing their appetites and their dignity. The young warlock resolved to never fall prey to such weakness, and employed dark arts to ensure his immunity. Unaware of his secrets, the warlock's family laughed to see him so aloof and cold. All will change, they prophesied, when a maid catches his fancy. But the young warlock's fancy remained untouched, though many a maiden was intrigued by his haughty mien, and employed her most subtle arts to please him. None succeeded in touching his heart. The warlock gloried in his indifference and the sagacity that had produced it. The first freshness of youth waned, and the warlock's peers began to wed and then to bring forth children. Their hearts must be husks, he sneered inwardly as he observed the antics of the young parents around him, shriveled up by the demands of these newling offspring. And once again, he congratulated himself upon the wisdom of his early choice. In due course, the warlock's aged parents died. Their son did not mourn them. On the contrary, he considered himself blessed by their demise. Now he reigned alone in their castle. Having transferred his greatest treasure to the deepest dungeon, he gave himself over to a life of ease and plenty, his comfort the only aim of his many servants. The warlock was sure he must be an object of immense envy to all who beheld his splendid and untroubled solitude. Fierce were his anger and chagrin. Therefore, when he overheard two of his lackeys discussing their master one day, the first servant expressed pity for the warlock, who, with all his wealth and power, was yet beloved by nobody. But his companion jeered, asking why a man with so much gold and a palatial castle to his name had been unable to attract a wife. Their words dealt dreadful blows to the listening warlock's pride. He resolved at once to take a wife, and that she would be a wife superior to all the others. She would possess outstanding beauty, excite envy and desire in every man who beheld her. She would spring from magical lineage, so that their offspring would inherit outstanding magical gifts. And she would have wealth at least equal to his own, so that his comfort in comfortable existence would be assured, in spite of the additions to his household. It might have taken the warlock 50 years to find such a woman, yet it so happened that the very day after he decided to seek her, a maiden answering his every wish, arrived in the neighborhood to visit her kinsfolk. She was a witch of prodigious skill and possessed of much gold. Her beauty was such that it tugged at the heart of every man who set eyes on her. Of every man, that is, except for one. The warlock's heart felt nothing at all. Nevertheless, she was the prize he sought, so he began to pay her court. All who noticed the warlock's change in manners were amazed, and told the maiden that she had succeeded where a hundred had failed. The young woman herself was both fascinated and repelled by the warlock's attentions. She sensed the coldness that lay behind the warmth of his flattery, and had never met a man so strange and remote. Her kinsfolk, however, deemed theirs a most suitable match, and, eager to promote it, accepted the warlock's invitation to a great feast in the maiden's honor. The table was laden with silver and gold, bearing the finest wines and most sumptuous food. Minstrels strummed on silk-string lutes and sang of a love their master had never heard or felt, their master had never felt. The maiden sat upon a throne beside the warlock, who spoke with low, imploring words of tenderness he had stolen from the poets, without any idea of their true meaning. The maiden listened, puzzled, and finally replied, "You speak well, warlock, and I would be delighted by your attentions if only I knew you had a heart. If only I thought you had a heart." The warlock smiled and told her that she need not fear on that score. Bidding her follow, he led her from the feast and down to the locked dungeon where he kept his greatest treasure. Here, in an encased crystal casket, was the warlock's beating heart. Long since disconnected from eyes, ears, and fingers, it had never fallen prey to beauty, or to a musical voice, or to the feel of silken skin. The maiden was terrified by the sight of it, for the heart was shrunken and covered in long black hair. "Oh, what have you done?" she lamented. "Put it back where it belongs, I beseech you." Seeing that this was necessary to please her, the warlock drew his wand, unlocked the crystal casket, slashed his own breast, and replaced the hairy heart in the empty cavity it had once occupied. "Now you are healed, and will know true love," cried the maiden, and she embraced him. The touch of her soft white arms, the sound of her breaths in his ear, the scent of her heavy gold hair, all pierced the newly awakened heart like spears. But it had grown strange during its long exile, blind and savage in the darkness to which it had been condemned, and its appetites had grown powerful and perverse. The guests at the feast noticed the absence of their host and the maiden. At first, untroubled, they grew anxious as the hours passed and finally began to search the castle. They found the dungeon at last, and a most dreadful sight awaited them there. The maiden lay dead upon the floor, her breast cut open, and beside her crouched the mad warlock, holding in one bloody hand a great, smooth, shining scarlet heart, which he licked and stroked, varying to exchange it for his own. In the other hand he held his wand, trying to coax from his own chest the shriveled, hairy heart. But the hairy heart was stronger than he was, and refused to relinquish its hold upon his senses, or to return to the coffin in which it had been locked for so long. Before the horror-struck eyes of the guest, the warlock cast aside his wand, and seized a silver dagger. Vowing never to be mastered by his own heart, he hacked it from his chest. For one moment, the warlock knelt triumphant, with the heart clutched in each hand. Then he fell across the maiden's body and died. It is now 11 minutes and 7 seconds since I started recording. We are now at the Albus Dumbledore on the Warlock's Hairy Heart portion of this video. Anyone who I told to skip 10 minutes ahead, I am deeply sorry that I got it wrong. I have been stuttering through this thing. I have a really weird thing with my speech. I sometimes stutter, and I tend to do it a lot. We're going to take a short break to drink some water. I recommend you drink some water at home too, because water is important. And if you're about to go to sleep, then at the end of this video, or like right now, go use the bathroom, because preemptive peeing is a very, very good way to make sure you sleep longer, because then you don't wake up in the middle of the night needing to pee. It's called tactical weeing, according to Bingo from Bluey, which honestly is just so cute. So drink some water. We'll be back in a second. And we're back. Back for Albus Dumbledore on the Warlock's Hairy Heart. This is my first time in 4 years, I think, reading this portion again. It's been like 4 years since I even went to the library, because I'm so scared of losing the books that I just stopped going, because I lost like 3 books in a row and had to pay fines for them. So, onward with the story. As we have already seen, Beedle's first 2 tales attracted criticism for their themes of generosity, tolerance, and love. The Warlock's Hairy Heart, however, does not appear to have been modified or much criticized in the hundreds of years since it was first written. The story, as I eventually read it in the original runes, was almost exactly that which my mother had told me. That said, the Warlock's Hairy Heart is by far the most gruesome of Beedle's offerings, and many parents do not share it with their children until they think they are old enough not to suffer nightmares. Which has like a footnote here, and at the bottom of the footnote it said, according to her own diary, Bellatrix Bloxham has never recovered ever from overhearing the story being told by her aunt to her older cousins. Quite by accident, my little ear fell against the keyhole. I can only imagine that I must have been paralyzed with horror, for I inadvertently heard the whole of the disgusting story, not to mention ghastly details of the dreadfully unsavory affair of my Uncle Nobby, the local hag, and a sack of bouncing bulbs. The shock almost killed me. I was in bed for weeks, and so deeply traumatized that I developed the habit of sleepwalking back to the same keyhole every night, until at last my dear papa, with only my best interest at heart, put a sticking charm on my door at bedtime. End quote. Apparently, Bellatrix could find no way to make the Warlock's Hairy Heart suitable for Oh, sorry. Apparently, Beatrix could find no way to make the Warlock's hairy heart suitable for children's sensitive ears, as she had never rewrote it for the Toadstool Tales. Oh, the horrors. I hate the Toadstool Tales. I've never read it because it doesn't fucking exist, but in the story, in like the Albus Dumbledore notes, they trash it so much because of how horribly sugar-coated it is. They say that in the first story of the book, which is the wizard's leaking cauldron, maybe I think, he says that in Toadstool Tales they altered it so terribly that children would throw up when they heard it. Back to the notes. Why then the survival of this grisly tale? I would argue that the Warlock's hairy heart has survived intact through the centuries because it speaks to the dark depths in all of us. It addresses one of the greatest and least acknowledged temptations of magic, the quest for invulnerability. Of course, such a quest is nothing more or less than a foolish fantasy. No man or woman alive, magical or not, has ever escaped some form of injury, whether physical, mental, or emotional. To hurt is as human as to breathe. Nevertheless, we wizards seem particularly prone to the idea that we can bend the nature of existence to our will. The young warlock, footnote number 2. The term warlock is a very old one, although it is sometimes used as interchangeable with wizard. It originally denoted one learned in dueling and all martial magic. It was also given as a title to wizards who had performed feats of bravery, rather as muggles, or sometimes knighted for acts of valor. By calling the young wizard in this story a warlock, Beedle indicates that he has already been recognized as especially skillful at offensive magic. These days, wizards use warlock in one of two ways: to describe a wizard of unusually fierce appearance, or as a title denoting particular skill or achievement. Thus, Dumbledore himself was chief warlock of the Wizengamot. JKR. The young warlock in this story, for instance, decides that falling in love would adversely affect his comfort and security. He sees love as a humiliation, a weakness, a drain on a person's emotional and material resources. Of course, the centuries-old trade in love potions show that our fictional wizard is hardly alone in seeking to control the unpredictable course of love. The search for a true love potion, footnote number 3, Hector Dagworth Granger, founder of the most extraordinary Society of Pioneers, explains powerful infatuations can be induced by the skillful potioneer, but never yet has anyone managed to create the truly unbreakable, eternal, unconditional attachment that alone can be called love. Back to the notes. The search for a true love potion continues to this day, but no such elixir has yet to be created, and leading pioneers to doubt that it is possible. The hero in this tale, however, is not even interested in a simulation of love that he can create or destroy at will. He wants to remain forever uninfected by what he regards as a kind of sickness, and therefore performs a piece of dark magic that would not be possible outside of a storybook. He locks away his own heart. The resemblance of this action to the creation of a Horcrux has been noted by many writers. Although Beedle's hero is not seeking to avoid death, he is dividing what was clearly not meant to be divided, of body and heart rather than soul, and in doing so he is falling foul of the first Adalbert Waffling's fundamental laws of magic. Temper with the deepest mysteries, the source of life, the essence of self, only if prepared for consequences of the most extreme and dangerous kind. And sure enough, in seeking to become superhuman, this foolhardy young man renders himself inhuman. The heart he has locked away slowly shrivels and grows hair, symbolizing his own descent to beasthood. He is finally reduced to a violent animal who takes what he wants by force, and he dies in a futile attempt to regain what is now and forever beyond his reach: a human heart. Though somewhat dated, the expression "to have a hairy heart" was passed into everyday wizarding language to describe a cold or unfeeling witch or wizard. My maiden aunt, Honoria? Sounds like gonorrhea. Oh my god. Always alleged that she called off her engagement to a wizard in the improper use of magic office because she discovered in time that he had a hairy heart. It was rumored, however, that she actually discovered him in the act of fondling some horcrux. Footnote number 4. Horcrux are pink, bristly, mushroom-like creatures. It is very difficult to see why anyone would want to fondle them for further information. Which she found deeply shocking. More recently, the self-help book, The Hairy Heart, A Guide to Wizards Who Won't Commit. Footnote number 5, not to be confused with Hairy Snout, Human Heart, a heart-rendering account of one man's struggle with lycanthropy. I should read that if she actually writes it and I find it secondhand or in the library, I would read this so badly. Has topped bestseller list. End of chapter, and we get this very pretty little drawing of a stick, an axe, footprints, a crown, and a collar, which I feel like, yeah, it connects to the next story. I'm not gonna read that one tomorrow. I think I'll start from the beginning of the book. The only reason why I started in the middle of this book was because I read it to my best friend 2 days ago. I read it to her in WhatsApp. I recorded myself and I sent it to her because I wanted her to read one of my favorite stories from this book, and she said something that reminded me of it. So I looked all over the house, couldn't find my copy in English of the book, went to the library in the middle of the day, the second it opened, went inside, searched for 30 minutes, found the book, came back home, and recorded it at like 2 a.m. for her because I really, really wanted her to read it, only for her to be squeamish and not want to listen to it. So it's okay though. I love my friend, and it's okay that she's squeamish. There's some stuff she does that I don't like, and I get it. Not everyone likes the same things. It's completely okay. I hope you enjoyed your bedtime story. Don't forget to brush your teeth and have a good night's sleep. Bye-bye.